I never planned on revealing my success to my family this way, but standing in my tiny apartment's living room, watching my mother's champagne glass shatter on the Italian marble floors, I realized some secrets can't stay hidden forever. My name is Sophia Chen, and at 28, I'm what most people would consider successful, though my family would disagree. 6 years ago, I walked away from our family's prestigious law firm to pursue real estate development, throwing away generations of tradition, as my mother loved to remind me. This is quaint, Mom said now, her Hermes scarf artfully draped across her shoulders as she surveyed my 800 square foot apartment. The way she said quaint made it sound like a terminal illness. I suppose it's all you can afford on a property manager's salary. My father stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, surveying the city view with barely concealed disappointment. My older sister Victoria perched on the edge of my sofa like she was afraid it might contaminate her designer dress. At least the building is in a decent neighborhood, Victoria offered, her tone suggesting this was the only positive thing she could find to say. Though I can't imagine living in such a modest space. I bit back a smile. If they only knew that this modest apartment was just my pied-à-terre, a convenient place to stay when I had late meetings in the city. But they didn't know, none of them did, because I'd spent years carefully hiding my success from them. Well, Mom said, setting down her champagne glass on my marble coffee table with a sharp click, we didn't come here to criticize. The unspoken though we could hung in the air. We came to make you an offer. Here it was. The real reason for this unexpected family visit to my tiny apartment. I've been wondering when they'd get to it. The firm is expanding, Dad finally spoke, turning from the window. We're opening a new real estate division. Your sister will head it up, of course, but we thought. He paused, as if the next words pained him. We thought you might like to come back. Handle some of the property law aspects. Under my supervision, naturally, Victoria added quickly. You'd need quite a bit of catching up after wasting all these years managing rental properties. I had to admire their timing. They'd waited until my housewarming party, surrounded by the evidence of what they perceived as my modest means, to offer their loaded olive branch. In their minds, I must be desperate by now, tired of scraping by, ready to crawl back to the family fold. That's quite an offer, I said carefully, keeping my face neutral. What brought this on? Mom brightened, mistaking my question for interest. Well, darling, we've been worried about you. Living in this tiny place, working such a common job. The Chens have been legal powerhouses for 3 generations. It's time you took your place in the family legacy. Plus, Victoria added with a smirk, this building was just purchased by Winchester Development. They're planning to convert it to luxury condos. You'll need to find a new place soon anyway. I fought to keep my expression steady. Winchester Development, my company, operating under my mother's maiden name to keep my family from finding out. The purchase had been finalized last week. The irony was almost too perfect. Really? I asked, the picture of innocent concern. I hadn't heard anything about that. Of course you haven't, Victoria said with a patronizing smile. These high-level real estate deals are a bit above your pay grade. But don't worry, with the salary we're offering at the firm, you could afford something slightly better than this. Just then, my phone buzzed. Right on schedule. Excuse me, I said, checking the message. It seems the building owner is here for the housewarming. I invited all the residents. Mom's eyebrows shot up. The owner? Darling, you don't invite property owners to tenant parties. It's not done. The doorbell rang before I could respond. I opened it to reveal Marcus, my VP of operations, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. He carried a leather portfolio bearing the Winchester Development logo. Ms. Winchester, he said formally, using my professional name. I have the quarterly reports you requested. And congratulations on the successful acquisition of the Clayton portfolio. The silence that fell over my apartment was absolute. I could practically hear my family's collective intake of breath. Thank you, Marcus, I said calmly, taking the portfolio. I believe you know my family. Mom, Dad, Victoria. You remember Marcus Johnson? He used to intern at your firm before joining Winchester Development. Marcus nodded politely to my stunned family members. Of course. Though I believe you were unaware that Ms. Winchester here is our CEO and majority owner. She prefers to keep a low profile. The sound of shattering glass made us all jump. Mom's champagne glass had slipped from her fingers, spreading expensive bubbles across my imported marble floors. You, Victoria sputtered, her perfect composure cracking. You're Emma Winchester. The Emma Winchester who's been outbidding us on prime properties for the past 3 years. I smiled, enjoying the way her face flushed. Guilty. Though technically, Emma is my middle name. I found it made things simpler to use something other than Chen in business dealings. Helps avoid any appearance of trading on the family name. But, Mom's voice was faint. But you live in this tiny apartment. Of this, I gestured around the space they've been criticizing all evening. This is just my city crash pad. My actual residence is the penthouse at the Margaret. I enjoyed watching their eyes widen at the mention of the city's most exclusive address. Would you like to see those quarterly reports? Winchester Development's current portfolio value might interest you. Dad reached for the portfolio with shaking hands. I watched as he flipped through the pages, his face growing paler with each turn. Without a word, he handed it to Mom, who sank onto my modest sofa as she read. $6 billion in assets under management, she whispered. 30 successful developments in the past 3 years. Projected growth. She looked up at me like she'd never seen me before. How? Well, I said, enjoying this moment more than I probably should. It turns out all those years of watching you and Dad build the firm weren't wasted. I learned a lot about business, law, and strategy. I just decided to apply those lessons to real estate development instead of property law. Victoria was still staring at the portfolio in Mom's hands. The Clayton portfolio, that was supposed to be my big win. My chance to prove myself as head of the new division. But you outbid us by millions. Yes, I agreed. Though in my defense, I didn't know it was your bid. As I said, I prefer to keep family and business separate. Marcus cleared his throat. Ms. Winchester, shall I have the car brought around? The mayor's reception starts in an hour. Thank you, Marcus. I think we're done here. I turned to my family. I appreciate the job offer, but as you can see, I'm doing quite well on my own. Though if you're interested in discussing a possible merger between Winchester Development and the firm's new real estate division, I'm open to negotiations. Under my supervision, naturally. The look on Victoria's face was priceless. Mom seemed to be struggling to breathe. Dad just kept shaking his head, murmuring 6 billion, 6 billion, under his breath. I'll have my assistant send over the cleaning bill for the rug, I added, gesturing to the spilled champagne. Lovely to see you all. Do let yourselves out. As I walked toward my bedroom to change for the mayor's reception, I heard Victoria's strained whisper. Did you know? All this time, did any of you know? I smiled to myself. No, they hadn't known. I'd made sure of that, building my empire quietly, steadily, away from their judgment and interference. Let them chew on that during their long drive home in their luxury cars that suddenly felt a lot less impressive. Sometimes success is best served cold, with a side of shocked silence and spilled champagne. The mayor's reception that evening was exactly what I expected. Elaborate flower arrangements, perfectly chilled champagne, and now, whispered conversations following me everywhere I went. News travels fast in high society, and the revelation that Emma Winchester was actually Sophia Chen, daughter of prominent lawyers Richard and Diana Chen, had spread like wildfire. Ms. Winchester, the mayor's wife, caught my elbow as I examined a particularly elaborate ice sculpture. I had no idea you were a Chen. Your parents must be so proud. I smiled politely, taking a sip of champagne. They're certainly surprised. That was an understatement. In the 2 hours since I'd left them standing in my modest apartment, my phone had exploded with messages. 57 texts from Mom, 38 from Victoria, and even Dad, who never texted, had sent 15 messages. I hadn't read any of them. Marcus appeared at my elbow, a welcome interruption. The Johnson contract is ready for your review, he said quietly, and your sister has called the office 8 times in the past hour. I sighed. Let me guess. She wants to schedule an urgent meeting about potential collaboration opportunities. Actually, Marcus's lips twitched. She wanted to know if we're currently hiring for executive positions. She attached her resume. I nearly choked on my champagne. Victoria, who'd spent the past 6 years mocking my career choices, was now trying to join my company. The irony was delicious. Send her the standard application link, I said. The one all entry-level candidates use. Marcus's eyes sparkled with amusement. Of course. And your mother's lunch invitation. What lunch invitation? The one she had hand-delivered to the office via courier 30 minutes ago, along with a very expensive bottle of wine. Of course she did. Mom never could resist a grand gesture when she was trying to smooth things over. Usually, those gestures involved expensive gifts and elaborate meals where she would explain why everything was actually your fault. But she was willing to forgive you anyway. Declined politely, I said, I'm booked solid for the next 3 weeks. I wasn't actually, but they didn't need to know that. For 6 years, I built my company while they belittled my choices. For 6 years, I listened to their thinly veiled insults and endured their patronizing concern. It could wait a few weeks while I enjoyed watching them squirm. The next morning, I arrived at my actual office, a sprawling corner suite on the top floor of a building I owned, to find an elaborate flower arrangement blocking my door. The card read, "To our darling daughter, who has made us prouder than words can express. Love, Mom and Dad." I handed the flowers to my assistant. "Donate these to the Children's Hospital downtown," I said, settling behind my desk. "And Emma, hold all calls from my family members." "Yes, Ms. Winchester. Though you should know, your father is waiting in the main conference room." I froze halfway through opening my laptop. "Since when?" "Since 6 a.m. He said he'd wait as long as it takes." Dad had never waited for anyone in his life. At the law firm, people waited for him. This ought to be interesting. I made him wait 2 more hours before I finally walked into the conference room. He sat there in his perfectly tailored suit, looking oddly diminished despite his imposing frame. A stack of folders sat on the table in front of him. 6 hours, I said, checking my watch. That must be a record. Sophia. He stood smoothing his tie nervously. I'd never seen him nervous before. "You look professional." "That happens when you run a $6 billion company." I sat at the head of the table, his preferred power position in meetings. "What can I do for you, Dad?" He cleared his throat, opening one of the folders. "I've been reviewing Winchester Development's portfolio." "Your portfolio. It's impressive doesn't begin to cover it." "Thank you, though I doubt you came here just to compliment my business acumen." "No." He straightened, and I saw a flash of the commanding lawyer I'd grown up with. "I came to apologize. And to make you an offer." Now that was unexpected. In 34 years of practicing law, Richard Chen had apologized exactly twice, once to a judge after a particularly heated court exchange, and once to Mom when he missed the 20th anniversary for a case. An apology and an offer. I kept my voice neutral. Interesting combination. "The apology first," he said, surprising me again. "We were wrong. I was wrong. We underestimated you, dismissed your choices, and failed to see your vision. I spent all night reviewing your company's achievements," and he swallowed hard. "You've surpassed anything I could have imagined for you." I waited, letting the silence stretch. He fidgeted. "Another first." "The offer," he continued finally, "is a merger. Not the patronizing one your mother and I suggested yesterday. A real merger between equals. Your real estate empire and our legal expertise. Together, we could dominate the market." I picked up one of his folders, pretending to study it while I gathered my thoughts. The offer was smart, strategically sound. The kind of deal I might have considered if it had come from any other law firm. "And Victoria?" I asked, still supervising me. Dad had the grace to look embarrassed. "Victoria has been knocked down a few pegs. Finding out her little sister outmaneuvered her while she wasn't looking has been educational." "Educational," I repeated. "Like finding out your daughter isn't just the family disappointment." He flinched. "We never said." "No," I cut him off. "You just implied it. Every time you compared my modest career to Victoria's achievements, every time you asked when I was going to stop playing with real estate and come back to the family business, every time you treated me like I was one step away from financial ruin." "Sophia." I'm not finished. I stood walking to the window that overlooked the city. "Do you know why I kept Winchester Development secret from you? Why I used Mom's maiden name?" He shook his head. "Because I wanted to succeed or fail on my own merits. Not as a Chen, not as your daughter, but as myself. And I did succeed. Without your name, without your connections, without your approval. So tell me, Dad, why would I want to merge with you now?" "Because," he said quietly, "we're family, and I'm trying to make things right." I turned to look at him, this man who loomed so large in my childhood. He looked older suddenly, more vulnerable. For the first time, I wondered if maybe he was as human as the rest of us. I'll think about it, I said finally. Have your team send over the proposal. A real proposal, not just some hastily assembled pitch meant to capitalize on yesterday's revelation. He stood gathering his folders. That's fair. More than fair, given how we've treated you. He paused at the door. For what it's worth, Sophia, I really am proud of you. Not because of the money or the success, but because you had the courage to follow your own path. It took me until today to see that. After you left, I sat in a conference room for a long time, looking out at the city I'd helped shape. Buildings bearing my company's mark dotted the skyline, tangible proof of my success. I'd achieved everything I'd set out to do, proven every doubter wrong. So why did Dad's apology make me feel so unsettled? My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Can we talk? Please? Just sisters, no business. I almost deleted it, but something stopped me. Maybe it was Dad's unexpected vulnerability, or maybe I was just tired of carrying old hurts. Instead, I typed back, tomorrow. The coffee shop on 5th, 8 a.m. Her response was immediate. I'll be there. And Sophia, I'm sorry too. I put my phone away and walked back to my office. The Children's Hospital had sent a thank you note for the flowers. I opened it to find a crayon drawing of a bright yellow daisy and a message. Thank you for making our rooms prettier. Sometimes, I reflected, the best revenge isn't dramatic showdowns or cutting remarks. Sometimes it's just living well and being generous with others. My family might be trying to make amends now, but I had built something valuable without them, not just a successful company, but a life I was proud of. Let them marinate in that knowledge for a while. I had a meeting with the City Planning Commission in 20 minutes, and unlike some people, I didn't keep others waiting. I arrived at the coffee shop at 7:55 a.m., choosing a quiet corner table. Victoria was already there, nervously shredding a napkin. Gone was her usual power suit and perfect makeup. Instead, she wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. She looked younger, more like the sister I remember from our childhood. You came, she said, sounding surprised. I wasn't sure you would. I said I would. I ordered my usual espresso from the barista, who knew me as a regular. And unlike some people, I keep my word. Victoria flinched. I deserve that. I deserve worse, actually. This was new, Victoria Chen admitting she deserved criticism. I studied her carefully, looking for signs of the usual manipulation. Instead, I saw something I hadn't expected, genuine distress. Dad showed me the company files, she continued, her voice quiet. Everything you've built, all those deals I thought were just lucky breaks by some upstart developer. That was all you. Yes, I said simply. That was all me. The Anderson Plaza development, the one I told everyone was a disaster waiting to happen. It's now the most successful mixed-use property in the city. I took a sip of my espresso. The same development you said would bankrupt whatever fool was behind it at last year's Christmas dinner? Yes, that's mine too. She pushed her untouched coffee aside. God, I was horrible to you. All those years, acting so superior, so convinced I was the successful sister while you were just playing at business. And the whole time, you were running circles around everyone in the industry. Did you really come here just to list all the ways you were wrong about me? No, she straightened, meeting my eyes directly. I came to tell you that I withdrew my application to Winchester Development. That surprised me. Why? Because I don't deserve it. Because applying for a job with my little sister's company after years of treating her like a failure was possibly the most hypocritical thing I've ever done. And because she hesitated. Because I need to figure out who I am without Mom and Dad's approval. The way you did. I sat back, genuinely stunned. This wasn't the Victoria I knew, the perfect eldest daughter, always striving to meet our parents' expectations, always competing to be the best. What brought this on? Honestly, watching Mom and Dad scramble to get back in your good graces. Do you know what Mom did this morning? She called all her society friends to brag about her brilliant younger daughter, the real estate mogul. The same daughter she was pitying just 2 days ago. I couldn't help but smile. Let me guess, she's already planning some elaborate party to introduce Emma Winchester to her social circle. A gala, Victoria confirmed with a wry smile. She's already called 3 event planners. But that's not the point. The point is, watching them switch from dismissing you to bragging about you made me realize something. Their approval, it's completely meaningless. You succeeded without it. Maybe, maybe I need to try that too. I stirred my espresso, considering her words, and the firm's real estate division. I told Dad I don't want to head it anymore. She shrugged. My heart's not in real estate law. Never has been. I just did it because that's what they expected. What do you want to do? Environmental law. She said it quickly, like she was afraid of the words. I've always been passionate about conservation, but Dad said it wasn't prestigious enough. Not Chen family material. The irony was delicious. The perfect daughter was finally rebelling, and all it had taken was discovering her little sister's secret empire. You know, I said carefully, Winchester Development has a substantial green building initiative. We're leading several sustainable development projects. Hope flickered across her face. I know, I read about your zero-carbon apartment complex in the Business Journal. It's incredible. We could use a good environmental lawyer. I held up a hand as her eyes widened. Not as an executive. Entry level, like everyone else. You'd have to prove yourself. You'd really give me a chance. After everything. On 2 conditions. I leaned forward. First, you start at the bottom. No special treatment, no pulling the family card. You succeed or fail on your own merits. She nodded eagerly. Absolutely. What's the second condition? You tell Mom the gala is off. I'm not interested in being paraded around like some society trophy. Victoria actually laughed. Can I be there when you tell her? Her head might actually explode. For the first time in years, I felt a genuine connection with my sister. Not competition, not resentment, just understanding. How about we tell her together? Over lunch at my actual apartment. The penthouse at the Margaret. Victoria's eyes sparkled. Now that I have to see. As we finished our coffee, Victoria grew serious again. I really am sorry, Sophia. Not just because you turned out to be successful, but because I was a terrible sister. I should have supported you, not torn you down. You're right, I agreed. You should have. But you can't change the past. What matters is what you do now. I won't let you down, she promised. Not as a sister, and not as an employee, if you decide to give me that chance. Speaking of which, I checked my watch. If you're serious about the job, be at the Winchester Development offices Monday at 8 a.m. Ask for Marcus. He'll put you through the standard interview process. I'll be there. She stood, then hesitated. One more thing. How did you do it? Keep it secret all this time? I smiled. By understanding something it took you until now to learn. Success doesn't need an audience. It just needs determination and patience. Walking back to my office after our meeting, I felt lighter somehow. Victoria's transformation seemed genuine. Time would tell if it lasted. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom, another elaborate dinner invitation. I deleted it without responding. They needed to learn that relationships, like respect, had to be earned. Marcus was waiting in my office with the day's schedules. Your sister left quite an impression at the coffee shop, he said. My sources say she actually apologized. Several times. I raised an eyebrow. You had someone watching my coffee meeting. Standard security protocol for all your meetings, Ms. Winchester. Especially family ones. I smiled at his protectiveness and the environmental law position we discussed. Already arranged, the interview panel is prepared to be thoroughly objective. Though he smiled slightly, her credentials are actually quite impressive when you remove the Chen name from the equation. Good, I settled behind my desk. What's next on the agenda? The Clayton portfolio closing documents need your signature. And he hesitated. Your mother is in the lobby. Again, with what appears to be wedding venue brochures. I groaned. Some things never changed. But maybe some things did. Victoria had surprised me today. Perhaps there was hope for my family after all. Tell Mom I'm in meetings all day, I said. But, send her a calendar invite for lunch next week. At the Margaret. It's time she saw how her disappointing daughter really lives. Marcus nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. And shall I warn the building staff about potential fainting spells when she sees the penthouse? Better have medical on standby, I agreed. Just in case. The day of the family lunch at the Margaret arrived with perfect weather, and predictably, another elaborate flower delivery from Mom. This time, I kept the arrangement. It would look nice on my terrace. Victoria arrived first. looking professional but nervous in her new business attire. She'd been at Winchester Development for a week now, starting in the environmental compliance department. "How's the new job?" I asked as we waited for our parents. "Challenging," she admitted. "Your legal team is incredibly thorough. I'm learning more in a week than I did in a year at the firm." She paused. "Also, your employees really respect you, not because you're the boss, but because you're good at what you do." Before I could respond, the private elevator opened, revealing Mom and Dad. Mom's eyes widened as she took in the penthouse's grand entrance, with its soaring ceilings and wall of windows overlooking the city. This is, for once my mother was speechless. "Welcome to my actual home," I said, enjoying their stunned expressions. "Not the crash pad you were so concerned about." The penthouse was my pride and joy minus 5,000 square feet of carefully curated luxury. Modern art adorned the walls. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased panoramic city views, and the outdoor terrace featured a garden that would make any botanist envious. "The art collection alone must be worth millions," Dad murmured, examining a piece I'd acquired at auction last year. "4 million, actually." I led them to the dining room, where my private chef had prepared lunch. "But who's counting?" Mom sank into her chair, still looking shell-shocked. "All this time, all those years we worried about you." "You weren't worried," I corrected her gently. "You were judging." "There's a difference." "Sophia," she began, but I held up a hand. "Let me finish. For years, you and Dad had this very specific idea of success. The law firm, society parties, the right connections. When I chose a different path, you assumed I was failing. You never once asked if I was happy, if I was fulfilled. You just decided I needed to be saved from my own choices." Dad set down his fork. "We were wrong. Completely wrong. And not just about your success." "The thing is," I continued, "I didn't build all this to prove you wrong. I built it because it was what I wanted to do. The fact that I succeeded beyond your wildest expectations, that's just a bonus." Victoria smiled. "A pretty spectacular bonus, though. The look on Mom's face when she saw your lobby fountain was priceless." Speaking of which, Mom finally found her voice about the gala I'm planning. "No gala," I said firmly. "No society parties, no grand revelations. My success doesn't need to be validated by your social circle." "But—" "Mom," Victoria interrupted, surprising me. "Let it go. Sophia's right. She's successful on her own terms. She doesn't need our world's approval." Mom looked between us, perhaps finally seeing her daughters as the adults we'd become. I suppose I have a lot to learn about both of you." "You do," I agreed, starting with the fact that Victoria is thriving in her new role at Winchester Development because she chose it, not because it was expected of her. Dad raised his eyebrows. "Is this true, Victoria?" "It is." Victoria sat straighter. "I'm starting from the bottom, learning everything properly, and I love it. It's the first time I've felt like I'm doing something because I want to, not because it's what a Chen should do." Both my daughters, Mom mused, successful in real estate, though perhaps not in the way we expected. "That's the point, Mom," I said, leading them out to the terrace after lunch. "Success doesn't have to look the way you expect. Sometimes it's better when it doesn't." Standing there, overlooking the city I'd helped shape, surrounded by my gradually evolving family, I felt at peace, not because they finally approved, but because I no longer needed that approval. "So," Dad said, "about that merger proposal." "Still thinking about it," I cut him off with a smile. "But for now, let's just be family. Business can wait." As they prepared to leave, Mom paused. "That tiny apartment, you kept it all this time, even with this spectacular penthouse. Why?" I thought about it, to remind myself where I started, and maybe to have a place that was just mine, away from expectations, even self-imposed ones. She nodded slowly, perhaps finally understanding. "You're quite remarkable, Sophia. I'm sorry it took us so long to see that." "Better late than never," I said, hugging her goodbye. "But Mom, the next time you visit, try not to drop any champagne glasses. The marble floors in either apartment aren't cheap to maintain." Their laughter echoed in the private elevator as they descended. Victoria lingered behind. "Thank you," she said simply, "not just for the job, but for showing me there's another way to live." I smiled. "Just remember, success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right." After they all left, I stood on my terrace, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply living your best life on your own terms and letting others catch up when they're ready. And if they never do, well, the view from the top is spectacular either way.